game in GameFi, and we have Akshay back to host it. And our speakers are Satish from Rage Fan and Cheryl from Crop Bites. Akshay, over to you.
What's
Thanks,
up,
Manav.
guys?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Satish. Good to connect with you both again.
Same here.
S-
Howdy,
s-
Akshay.
I'm doing well. Howdy, Satish, and howdy, Cheryl. How are you both doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Very
what's
well.
what's keep what's keeping you both busy? First, let's answer that. What's happening at your ends? Quick one. We'll also use this one as a moment to introduce you from the perspective of each of your journeys. Right. I know both of you have done a lot in the space. So feel free to take us through the ride.
Over to you, sir.
Cheryl,
I
over
mean,
to
go
you
first.
first. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Me first. All right. So, yes, for everyone who doesn't know me here, I'm Cheryl. I'm co-founder and CMO at Crop Bites. Crop Bites is a farming simulation game which is built on real-world economy, and it has an in-game market. It has game assets. We've actually been building for the last 4.5 years. We started out in 2018. And I mean, coming back to where we are now, the bear market, super excited. We've built through multiple market cycles. And I think this is the exciting part for us because we get to build without all the noise that's there around. And yeah, that's where we are at right now, building. Again, we've been close to the community right from the start. And it's really good when you do that because there's focus and you're completely in touch with what needs to kind of come out for the community given the current market scenario. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Lovely.
A humble one for one of the top 20 games in the Web3 space. Cheryl, I mean, it is noises where you are. I mean, you get the crowd going. I think the game gets people going. So I think even if it's that humble pitch, I would plug in that marketing because I'm a proud investor in Crop Bites.
Thank you.
Okay, Satish, we've been associated for a bit. Rage Fan is an exciting venture. I think the more exciting things is where you're always hustling, right? So tell us about your learnings, your endeavors.
Sure.
Everybody will be excited to learn about that.
Sure. So when you are in the top 20 of the games in Web3, you don't have to hustle. So for people like us, we are continuously hustling. But anyway, so jokes apart, Satish, nice to meet all of you here. I've been in Web3 now. Web3 has been about 2.5 years, but I've been in tech for about 27 years, so fairly old man. I've earned all my gray hairs. Um, I have been in Web3, as I said, about 2.5 years. I've been in blockchain for about 4+ years because my journey in blockchain really started with enterprise solutions that could be built on blockchain. Right, I was working with the government, and one of the use cases that we were looking at for proactive governance was around blockchain. Spent quite a bit of time before that in enterprise companies. Have been in the who's who, including Cognizant, Computer Sciences Corporation, fairly senior roles. Last 2+ years, as I said, I've been in blockchain. What we are doing with Rage Fan is to kind of really attempt not just the ownership aspect of what Web3 brings to the table of assets and everything else that people keep talking about nowadays, but we are actually a firm believer in the community value creation and the fact that everything needs to be, end of the day, owned by the community. We are firm believers in the fact that tokenomics should reflect actual ownership and value should get locked into the tokens, and therefore you are only a custodian of the tokens that you own as a project till such time you are able to successfully establish value and do a proper product market fit, at which point the community should be able to start driving it. So from that perspective is where RagePon was born, and the reason why we picked up fantasy sports again. We did quite a bit of research around why fantasy sports, what's going on in that space, because we have seen such large companies really explode in the Indian market. And we realized, frankly, while nobody may want to say it out aloud, fantasy sports is nothing but gambling in a different form. So, and it's addictive. People come in and keep doing it because they believe at some point in time they're going to win a huge amount of money. That there's a pot at the end of the rainbow. So when you're doing it, the most important thing was, hey, you're going to do it anyway. Nobody's going to be able to stop you from doing it because it is gambling. It's very addictive. So while you are doing it, why don't you do it as a part of what you are doing with the community and create value for yourself? That was the whole philosophy around HFan. We continue to live with that philosophy. So areas that we are now exploring are hyper casual games, around what we can do with hyper casual games, create NFTs that have multiple values across multiple games rather than an NFT having a value with one game per se. So there are multiple experiments that we are doing. I also wear another hat as a champion for the Web3 initiatives under Nazara. It's a very interesting role. I continue to play that role in trying to see how we can take some of the largest games in the country into the Web3 world. So let's see. I mean, I spoke for a lot of time, but that's who I am.
Hey, not at all. I think well deserved time. I think you've. I do feel that a lot of people would relate to you after knowing that you full time. Both of you are full time into the gaming space, and both of you have seen firsthand challenges in the Web3 space, right? But I we talked to Cheryl a lot about sustainability at the fund, and I think we're more so learning from the Crop Bites team at that. Cheryl, I think it's important to understand, both the finance side of GameFi and game side of GameFi, and from your perspective, which one's heavier, or which one, do you think is not existing to a lot of extent right now?
Right. I think definitely game is the foundation of GameFi. So there definitely needs to be a lot of gaming in GameFi. I think, and also that's also lacking, you can say, to a certain extent right now. Because typically, I mean, like GameFi, what's the audience like? The audience is not Web2 players. The audience is here for a very different reason. They're opportunists who are here in an industry that's pretty early, and they're here for the finance aspect of it, and of course they are players as well. So I think a lot of the games that are launching, I think December, Jan, November, we have like this whole list of games that are kind of launching this period. They've all focused on the game aspect of it, but very little on the economy aspect of it. And I think in Web3, game and economy have to go hand in hand pretty much, because although they are very they are like two parts of this project, game and economics, but have to be taken care of. Because just out of our example, we started back in 2018, uh, uh, did a very successful launch, sold out all our NFTs, launched the game in 6 months, and then came the bear. When the bear came is when we realized NFTs don't sell in the bear market. Generally, even people who hold it, even newer people who want to hold it, they're not really up for it. People go silent, and that's when we actually cracked our model on sustainability. We kind of built the game on fungibility. We in fact moved about 80% of our game assets to being fungible. The beauty and the magic that it did to the game is that it brought a lot of liquidity to our markets, and that was the boom kind of element for us. Because going for, I mean, from that point, all our markets have been flourishing. Players have been holding these assets, are easily able to trade them on the marketplace. And this is one of the reasons why as CropBytes we've been able to be around for 4.5 years. The economy aspect of the game, which we were able to kind of bring in with the game mechanics, if that didn't exist, that would have been very difficult. So I think when we talk about game and finance, there's game economics and finance actually, not just, and game and economics pretty much go hand in hand. And I think although a lot of players and even a lot of Web2 studios in fact who are entering now are only thinking about game, NFTs, which means because that's clearly what they understand from how it worked in the Web2 world, right? But I think there's economics, and if not cracked well, it's another axie story, or it's another bubble that's going to burst in a couple of years, and it'll be really bad for their reputation and also for the players. And we don't want Web3 gaming to be Ponzi-nomics at the end of the day. So I think that's something that's missing. Economics or game plus economics is something that's missing.
See, my own perspective on that, if I can add 2 cents, I think the games that actually launched in October, November, December, January timeframe, they actually did finance. Only thing was that they didn't really care about whether it was sustainable finance or whether they were taking money from somebody else and giving it to somebody else. They realized that I have to make it financially interesting. They really, in my mind, really did not care about game experience too much. I mean, I cannot believe players who would actually want to put a game experience go and play Axie Infinite, right? I mean, absolutely, there was nothing in terms of game experience there. I think the whole idea was that I will take money from somebody else, give it to somebody else, because I actually understand the FI part, but I did not really worry about the economics part, which I think
Absolutely.
is, yeah, which I think Crop Bites, I have played the game a little bit. I'm not a big game player per se myself, but I've played it a little bit, and I think what has been really, really cool is about your ability to, utilize all the day-to-day stuff that anybody would want to do and make them into NFTs, make them into consumable items that people can continue to actually build out from. I think that's been a really, really cool thing to do.
Thank you. Good to know.
Interesting. Interesting. So, one thing that I was looking at was that, everybody is talking about there being less of gaming angle, less of storytelling, and more of, I mean, let's say unsustainable finance angle at first. But, you know, when I was looking at it from across the tables, when entrepreneurs were pitching me, these games that, they were trying to build and it would take 5 years for the games to get realized, I was like, I don't know who can wait that long, right?
But
And the
that's the web
reality,
2.0. Yeah, that's the
yeah,
web
and the
2.0
reality,
is.
exactly, exactly. The reality of the games that we see that have such, high quality avatars, such high quality graphics, they do take a lot of time to get built, right? Now, I do understand that there's a lot happening on the OpenAI front, a lot happening on the image, automated conversion from an image to a avatar front. But I don't think any of it is out there yet, right? So how do you feel, about I know other side was a huge success and people are going to wait for that for a few years. But do you see a lot of people, a lot of, let's say potential crop bites users waiting for, let's say what's to come in 2026 or 2025? And is that a major reason according to you for not having such high quality game side of things in Web3 games?
So if I can take that first, sure. Yeah. See, my own feeling, right, and this is one of the reasons why, frankly, Rage Fan stayed away from actually going into the game development side, is because it's a completely different skill. What I saw happen, in the second half of last year, and even to some extent to the first quarter of this year, was a lot of guys who understood to some extent, not economics, thanks to how Cheryl put it, but who understood that there was some hype around and they want to do something, started becoming very excited about trying to become a game development firm. So you have never run a game development firm before. You understood blockchain to some extent, frankly, not in the real, proper tokenomics model, or they understood it, they didn't want to accept it, frankly, and they went out and raised money, promising all sorts of games in all sorts of timelines, and that is sadly what has led to the situation in my mind that we find ourselves today, in terms of people saying the moment you talk about play to earn, they say it's a Ponzi scheme. The moment you talk about any sensible game, then people think again it will take too long. I mean, the reality is it will take too long. You have seen companies like Enterprise Arts. You have seen companies like Riot Games take eons, and they put a lot of their heart and soul into building something that may actually not even work after 2.5 years of development. They may actually realize it doesn't work, right? It's not necessarily appealing enough. The reality is it will take that time. So therefore, if people have been given some wrong expectation, hey, you are going to build a game in 6 months and launch a really cool game, I think that's nonsensical. What approach we took in Rage Fan, I mean, if I can talk about that for a little bit, we said, hey, we want to become a platform. We said we will not get into actual development of the game. We will become a platform where people can come in, launch games, and that is actually becoming a trend now. As you see WAM BAM, you see Joyride. What is happening is essentially we realized you need to be a platform because you're not a game development company. You can't suddenly become a game development company, but you know blockchain. You understand the value that blockchain can create for a game developer. So we said, hey, we will build a platform where the platform will essentially support hyper casual games, where people who don't have an understanding of blockchain can come in, launch hyper casual games as a game developer. you become a uniswap of game developers for hyper casual games. The moment you bring in more sophisticated games, the platform cannot support because you need a lot more integration into the game. You need a lot more activity to be done in the game, and the economics becomes different. But for a hyper casual game, it's a very sensible, simple economic model, and you need to set the expectation. You have to pay to play. It is not a unlimited, tab that will keep giving you, money just because you are playing. I mean, there is nothing in the economic world that works that way, right? So what we did was we built a platform and we said, guys, whoever is building a hyper casual game, they are welcome to come in, use the platform. We are partnering with multiple tokens, so we are saying it's not just our token. You use this as a platform, and you don't have to ask permission from us. So the whole idea was you stick to what you know, which is the blockchain side. You enable the guys who know their stuff to do what they need to do, and therefore both of you become successful, right? So what I think now is happening in the market is that sensibility is coming in. And I think, I've been impressed with what CropBytes has done. So I'll take that example again. I think that has helped people have an appreciation for the right kind of economics, that it cannot be economics that are built on continuously people coming in, and therefore you take the money from them and distribute it to somebody else. That's not sustainable economically, because at some point in time, people will stop coming in, and you need to be able to loop within the community that you have. And I think that CropBytes has done well. And for me personally, that's been a wonderful experience. When I went through and I understood how they have done it, it's a wonderful thing that they have done. Sorry, Cheryl, back to you.
You've said it all. But honestly, I think this part of the question that you asked, Akshay, in the beginning was, why is it so simple? Like, why are there lesser, you can say, complexities to the game? And I think that's a very interesting question. And while we talk to a lot of other games these days, we are also trying to advise some of the games that are kind of coming on the block. That's something that we tell them a lot, because think about a game like Farmville, right, with so many complexities but no model to earn and no economy. It's okay for a player to play that kind of game, because there it's only about the experience. But the minute you're investing and the minute you need to earn, and you need to kind of apply strategies, and that's what you've invested that needs to grow, the number of activities in the game needs to be simpler, right? Because you are literally risking that investment on the growth, on the growth in the game, right? So essentially, and then of course Web3. So for any new player who's trying from Web2, who's trying Web3 for the first time, it's very, very critical that your game has lesser complexities and is very simple to play. In our case, farming is a concept that's very well understood globally. In fact, is the easiest to be understood. And it's a building game. So in a building game, generally with lesser complexities, and that's by design that we took that decision back in 2018, to keep things simple. And even now, we actually have a roadmap that goes probably 10 years down. And every time, actually, another thing that I'd like to talk about here is the community. I think in Web3, community is very, very important. If you're not aligned to your community, and by the way, even the word community is so generally used in Web3, but I think from game to game, the kind of audience you have differs. So for CropBytes, we have players who prefer investing in the long term and keeping their funds in the long term, because the earnings are sustainable and they keep compounding. Versus there are a lot of other games where, say, PvP, right? So you play, you earn, you play, you earn, and you take it out. So generally, a Web3 player is playing, say, at least 5 games. He's not playing just one game, right? So in our game, we definitely attract these players who are playing in the long term. And when it comes to the roadmap for us, say, back in 2019, we had to make a decision whether we build an NFT marketplace or we build an in-game marketplace. An in-game marketplace basically gives the players the flexibility to buy and sell between themselves, thereby avoiding the complete gas fee. And an NFT marketplace would help us with the whole, running behind the hype, the whole NFT hype that was just about to begin. But we took the decision to implement something that would be really beneficial to our players, and that worked wonders. So I think in the Web3 gaming space, it's very important that you build very closely with your community. Even when it comes to our roadmap, a lot of what we are building, like today we are working on service economy, which is essentially going to make the game free to play. And but this is what is the best solution I would say in the bear market. where it gives so many more Web2 players who want to try a Web3 game the opportunity. So yeah, I think that's essentially what I want to talk about. One is the community aspect of it, and keeping a game simple for players to understand and onboard a lot easily.
Absolutely. And I think there's also that click with the in-game marketplace, to my own personal experience. So, I was, when I heard about Web3 and gaming together and read a few things around that, the early promise of, my, probably my Nintendo work, or Nintendo time spent getting, sort of realized as assets that I get to purchase it, let's say possibly EA Sports ecosystem in the future. I think that's something that I could relate to early on, and that kind of future is very exciting for me to see within Crop Bites, right? With these games that sort of relate to each other from a broader perspective of, let's say Web3 principles, or sustainability principles, or just rather, popularity principles in terms of the interest that people are finding in these games. I think that's wonderful to see. One thing I would like to touch upon is, and this is something that we've been trying to understand: how is the DNA of a Web2 gamer different from that of a Web3 gamer? And how do you, and Satish, I think this you can answer beautifully as well. That how do you create a cross connection between the two, if there's a lot of difference there?
I mean, see, I think there is one fundamental thing, right, between a Web2 and a Web3 guy. A Web2 guy comes in for the game. A Web3 guy comes in potentially because Web3 is still a trader's market, a finance market, rather than a gamer market or a utility market. I mean, you can look at some of the biggest metaverse numbers today, and it's sad, right? You're talking about Decentraland having 36 users. They claim no more people come in, only 36 people do some transaction and all of that. But the reality is it cannot be, thousands of times different. So the reality is, if you want to attract the mass, if you want to bring the mass to real utility, right, and wanting to use that utility, which is, you take, a Nintendo asset and you're able to sell that and, make really something out of it, right? It may not be everything. But the reality is, if you want to bring the mainstream, you need to make things about what they come in for. They come in for the game experience. Why
Product
people
market.
come into, yes,
Yeah.
they come in for Crop Bites, they will come in because they enjoy playing the game first. It's not about whether they make money. That is why even during a bear run, there are players who keep coming into, a Crop Bites ecosystem or any interesting ecosystem, and they'll do something or the other, right? Because they enjoy the game. So that cannot be anything that you actually put a question mark on. If you want to attract your Web2 to Web3. Now, the second point in terms of what they are looking for is, on day one, a very seamless experience. Keep it simple for me, keep it seamless for me. Going back to what Cheryl told about, why Farmville or how people could understand the game so easily, it is about simplicity. It is about, not complicating my life by saying, because I didn't come for sales, I didn't come for buying and selling an asset. I came in to enjoy the game. So first, handholding is about making my onboarding experience smooth, and which are actually a lot of products are coming up with, in terms of doing it. You look at Magic Link, you look at guys who allow you to create social login based, wallets and all of that stuff. You want to do something on the Web3 side, do it on the backside. Don't complicate the life of the player by making it, by making him, create a wallet where he has to remember 24 phrases and stuff. You have lost the guy. Right? So for him, it is about smoothness of experience. Hide the Web3 components as much as possible behind these kind of custodial, semi-custodial ballots. Give him the time to and messaging to understand. As he starts playing, as he starts earning more and more of the assets that he is earning by playing, start giving him the message. Did you know that you could actually go to the market and monetize the asset that you have earned? Start giving him an educational tool. Give him the time to come on board, and then once he understands that, then he will know, okay, if I can sell and make money, I may be able to buy something that is of interest to me that I'm not able to earn, by working my back off. That is when he understands and becomes a buyer. First, he has to understand he can make something in terms of sales, and then he understands, okay, oh, if I'm able to sell, I'm okay with buying it as well, because some of the things that I'm not able to get because I don't have enough time to keep grinding, I may be able to buy in the market. That is when
Right.
this whole loop will continue. If you do not focus on game experience and the onboarding experience, I don't think you have got long way for GameFi to go. You will keep having these spurts. You will keep having these ponzinomic models driving some people to it because they think they can make some quick buck, but it's not sustainable. And what is interesting is a lot of the Web2 companies, and including Nazara for that matter, who I am advising, are understanding this space, and more they want to kind of go through the journey, and they are not in a hurry. They are not bothered about whether I can sell 10 NFTs and make $100,000 out of it. They are guys who actually are focused on the game. They know how to make the game economics work by itself, and they will take the time to bring the game slowly but steadily into the Web3 world. Because what I also realize is, especially when I talk to Nitish and the bigger guys in the ecosystem, they believe there is value to be created in Web3. They are firm believers that that is where the future is. So therefore, they want to do it. They will take their time to do it, but they will handle the players. Unlike a Web3 startup, which I think very rarely understands that space, a Web2 startup will, or an established company will take the time, handle the journey of the Web3 user, and then expose the whole Web3 space to them. That's the way I look at the market. Cheryl?
Right. I think I have a slight different understanding there. So even when it comes to our game, we don't just have players. We have traders and investors as well. And when it comes to the initial onboarding, I think it's about how they understand what they need to do here. But the fact that the game is able to attract all three. So now if it's a gamer, if it's a player, he is going to probably look at investing a small amount and just the experience of the game itself. But if it's an investor, he's probably thinking about, hey, what assets are performing well here, how many people hold these assets, how much are they traded on a daily basis, how much is it a part of the game itself, the gameplay itself, and then he's going to go about investing in these assets, buying and selling when is the right opportunity. I think he's going to do that. And then you have sorry, that's a trader. And then you have investors. So in our game we also have utility assets, which are actually, like, say for example, a grinding mill, which is used by every single player in the game. After when the point comes when he needs to feed an animal, he needs to grind his produce, that is the crops, and then he feeds it to the animals. Now an industrialist in our metaverse would probably go about investing in these grinding mills and then keep earning a fee on it. So I think my understanding of web3 players is that we will have all three of these kind until web2 is up for web3 is up for mass adoption. And I don't think web3 is up for mass adoption right now. We still have a long way to go. The audience that we have right now are not just players, they are traders and investors as well.
Absolutely. I think that's spot on. You're absolutely right. I was looking at it from a mass adoption perspective, but you're right. You need all the three levels. Absolutely.
No, and I think, Satish, the perspective that you pointed out was exactly why I directed first the question to you, right? Because I see you, between two worlds, one at the side, Web2, sort of interfacing with Web3 or going to interface with Web3 at some point, right? I think we're big believers at the fund of the fact that a lot of stuff has come out of native Web3 folks, right? We may be complicating things, but I think at the fundamental level, we're definitely going to pave the path for high quality things to come about. But I think there's going to be some sort of nativeness in the early days, right? We do believe that this is the time for Prince of Persia, rather than, let's say, No Man's Sky, in that context for Web3, right? But it'll be lovely to see. I myself am tuned into some games that I've already evolved because of the kind of graphics that Web2 has taken us to, right? But I don't know how much of it would probably start loading when some more money is needed, or when some asset needs to be bought, and how that whole traversing is going to go about, and hence the investment also in Safil. Because I mean, for us, Safil is a wallet, is that social sign-on build thing that gives that experience, at least to the metaverse at first, probably not so to the gaming metaverses broadly, because I mean the kind of transactions that gaming metaverses would be crazy amounts more than anything else, right? So from that perspective, I feel, we're still getting towards, understanding how probably seed phrases and all of these things need to go onto the back end, wherein, the Web3 geek in us wants to look at this, but, I think it's been enough. We've been doing this for since 2017, and I think we can go a little ahead and, try to build a path towards getting to at least the space games that we're now seeing in Web 2, if not 100%, but to some extent at least.
See, I'll tell you one thing that is also happening, right? And I think that's a very realistic expectation. Even in the case of our fantasy sports platform, what we realized is while we as Web3 proponents keep wanting to say, hey, it's on chain, everything is validatable, you are welcome to check it out, nobody really cares. He
Right.
thinks, yes, it's important that you tell me that it is on chain, but I'm really not bothered. Right?
Right.
So, yeah, right. So what is happening is that we are going to see a lot more hybrid solution implementation, where a lot of things may not end up on chain, except that it really needs to end up on chain, right? That is where you are going to be able to solve the problem of chain speed, all of these other aspects that people keep talking about. The transaction throughput, I need a chain separately for my platform. It is actually not required, because when you go to mass adoption, 90% of the guys are not going to be bothered about whether I can do and everything is reflected on the chain. He is going to want to do that only when he wants to do something that gives him value because it's on the chain. So, for example, if I want to sell an asset, that is the only time when I'm bothered about whether I can implement or mint that asset on a chain, go put it in a NFT sales platform and sell the asset. Till I'm using the asset on the platform, I'm least bothered whether I can sell it or not, whether it's even on blockchain or not. What that means, though, is that the companies have to give the guy the confidence that you are not going to run away. Because the only difference between a centralized ecosystem and a decentralized is that you can actually get the confidence, and that's why people put everything on chain. But now you are telling me it doesn't make any sense for me to put everything on chain, which means that the company has to give enough confidence that if I want to mint it, I'll be in a position to mint it. That question is what I think people are going to try and answer, and we are actually thinking through that problem as well, right? How do we still give the guy a confidence without meeting everything on chain and making our expenses much more than what it needs to be? At the same time, give him the confidence, no, he can touch the asset anytime he wants. Even if, for example, whatever happens and the company decides to do something, he will still have the right to claim. That is the problem that we are trying to solve, because we are very, very convinced as a gaming company that two things. One, the guy doesn't care 90% of the time. Number two, end of the day, the throughput that we would need is never manageable in whatever chain form you make, because it's technically impossible to put everything on the speed at which I will need on the chain. Dream 11 processes about 1 million transactions in the last 15 minutes. Million is a very small number, frankly. They will process at least 10 million transactions in the last 15 minutes before the game starts. There is no way in hell I'm going to be able to do that on the chain. Right? So you are going to have a solution that gives people the confidence, allows you to do what is technically and most importantly financially possible, because I don't want to burn through my wallet trying to write everything on the chain. And at the same time, essentially make sure that the user gets the confidence that he is going to be able to get the rights to assets that he has earned. This is what we are trying to solve.
Sadish, quick follow-up question on that. Do you think then, games like poker that rely on digital, I would say, verified random functions, or anything that proves that there is actual randomness, right? Do you think those are the ones that, make more sense at the moment when we look at Web3 games? Or do you think, in your perspective, anything with having, the essential pieces tied into games, right, would make more sense. Tied into blockchains would make more sense at the moment.
See, it is number two is what it is going to take forward, right? Which is you want a game that you can enjoy, that you can play with, at the same time have the confidence that you can take it on the chain whenever you want, right? Just because I don't want it on the chain on day basis doesn't mean that I want to put simpler games on the chain. That is also not possible. So you got to have a solution, and as I said, that's what we are trying to solve. How do you give the confidence? Whether is it a database, sharing, how do you manage this confidence versus on-chain issue in a manner where it is technically possible and at the same time legally viable? That is what we are trying to solve. But you need to take that solution forward, because end of the day, if you just keep the games to a very simplistic ecosystem of Web3 possibility from a technology solution perspective, only what is supportable on the Web3 games will not go everywhere, because people are interested in ownership of the asset. There is no question about that. So you got to solve the problem, but you cannot solve it the way people think, because the game experience cannot get completely messed up, because everything I'm writing on chain, and I ask him to wait for 10 minutes before he can load up the cannon. I mean, no, nobody is going to use a cannon that will take 10 minutes to load up so that they can shoot, right? It just kills the game experience. So you got to find a solution that works on both the situations, and I think that is the only way Web3 will move forward, but it will move forward. I have no doubts about it.
Cheryl, I mean, if you have any thoughts on that, I'll let you, share those. But also, a specific question to you, right? A lot of people that are getting into the Web3 gaming space, what would be your advice? Because I know you're guiding a lot of, game studios. You're like guiding, some Web2 gaming companies. The early success has, sort of pushed you to a place wherein you could, smoothen it out for a lot of other people that are hitting the Web3 gaming space, right? So what would be your suggestion there?
A suggestion for, sorry.
Suggestion for basically people that are getting in. So a lot of our users might be the ones that are interested in building in the GameFi space, right? So we have a huge entrepreneurs as a base in the blockchain India community. So for them, if they're looking to get started, what's your way, suggestion to them? And I think, any essentials that you want to share around Web3 gaming, it'd be a good point to do that as well.
Sure. Thank you. So basically, I think what Satish just pointed out about the simplicity aspect, and I think Web 2.5, underrated, highly underrated. But I think, so for, again, just talking about us, because I can talk about us. So when we started off, we designed the game in a way where we did not want the entire game to be on chain. Like Satish said, again, the complexities that it brings with it. Another thing to think about is when you look at the players who are playing these games. So for example, in 2021 Jan, when we had like a lot of audience coming in from Southeast Asia, Latin America, for these folks it was a lot easier to play Crop Bytes, because you had to sign up and you could start playing. You get a few assets in the game and you start playing, versus for a in a game where it's on chain, you have your wallet, link it, then you buy, then you start playing. It's the experience is not absolutely great. So I think right now in Web3, for a lot of folks who are building, the things that we talk about, and our guidance is usually on these lines, which is, don't go about having an entire game which is on chain. You could have your tokens on chain, you could have the game assets on chain, but the game asset needs to have a utility of being on chain. So for example, in our game today, we are partnering with a couple of games where our assets, which have grown by over 100% in value since the start, which is 2018, it makes sense for our players to now hold these assets in their wallets. Maybe also because we are partnering with games where we are planning for this crossover of assets to happen. Even when it comes to the token, I think one of the biggest advice, in fact, that we give people is to not have your in-game token when you launch your game, because it's not mandatory. Like when we started out, we used TRX because the Tron network had so many games back in 2018-19 that was starting off. It made complete sense for us to be there. And for the first 3.5 years of the game, we actually had TRX as a currency in the game. And only in the last year, we actually launched CBX, which is now into the game for about 1.5 years. And it worked out pretty well for us, because even while we were launching CBX, we had about 500K users in the game who were holding assets and who were holding some form of currency in the game. So when CBX came in, they were all super pumped about this. So I think those are some of the things that we definitely advise to a lot of the games that we are now working with and advising. Yeah.
Satish, what are your learnings? I think I think you're at Web 2.5. You're breathing and living Web 2.5. essentially, because you have one leg on the Web2 side, one leg on the Web3 side, kind of, making a match between the two, right? So tell me.
Cheryl said it already. It's a very underrated situation. So I've got to talk to Cheryl offline about making it better rated. But anyway, so but it is true, right? I think what she said hit the nail on the head. I think people have either gone to the one extreme where everything is expected to be Web3 on day one. I'm going to be able to buy and sell, and everything is going to run in squeaky clean, hyper speed blockchain world, and nobody's talking about the cost that it's going to come up to. So that is one extreme. The other extreme is, oh no, we can't do this. We are Web2 players. We don't know how to go to Web3, and we don't want to go to Web3. Right? I think that is where the market so far has been. I think slowly but steadily, I think people are starting to appreciate, okay, there is somewhere in between. We need to start exploring that space and have a realistic expectation out of that space, right? As I said, the biggest question is when you talk to a Web3 company, when you talk to a blockchain guy, he says everything has to be on chain. I mean, if you have run a proper, gaming company, you don't need everything on chain. Nobody's bothered. And to be fair, I spent 1 year paying Polygon all the fees that I was paying for establishing fantasy sports records. When I realized, boss, nobody was bothered. So it is true. So it is a learning that people are going through. That hey, when you go to the mass adoption level, you don't need to put everything here. You don't need to complicate their life. You can keep it in a manner where you give them the benefit of Web3 without making their life miserable.
Absolutely.
Right? That is, I think, where things are.
Slightly connected question. Do you see the motive of, I mean, if it's not for decentralization, what is the motive really for playing these games, right? I mean, play to earn kind of focuses on the earning bit, right? I do, a lot of gamers and more so that have come from the Web2 space to the Web3 space have been highlighting the fact that, these airdrops are kind of making the early promise wrong itself, right? And instead they tend to say that Web3 games or gaming entrepreneurs are not leveraging performance marketing as they should. And I know Crop Bytes did that early on. Performance marketing was a key thing that they nailed, right? But do you see that as a valid point? Giving more importance to airdrops is kind of like a recipe for disaster, because you're in the essence promising people to come in for winning, and the first week when they do not win anything, that's when you immediately lose them. And essentially it's a scam after that, because they're not in it for the game, they're only in it for the short-term money making capability.
Yeah, I think I'll take this first. So I think firstly, if a game is only going about doing airdrops while it launches, that's the Ponzi game that I'm talking about, because that's the difference between a Web2 game and a Web3 game. See, in a Web2 game, you can go about giving infinite number of rewards, because there is no economics. Now, if a Web3 game doesn't have economics built in, then it can definitely, what I mean by economics here is also like the limited supply that needs to be there. Like, it's just like a town planning, right? Like, I mean, if you have 10 people in the town and you go about building a helipad, that definitely doesn't make sense. So, like, I think that's where it is at. I think airdrops definitely is not the way, because you only attract bounty hunters, and they are not Web3 gamers essentially. So I think that's my take on that, Satish.
And also relates to your thesis around there being multiple categories of users, right?
Yes.
That you were earlier hinting towards. Yeah. Satish, over to you.
No, I think she hit it on the head, right? I mean, um, even in our platform today, right? What we have told people is that there is nothing called free lunch. So you
Mm-hmm.
come in, there is a player versus player, opportunity. There's a tournament opportunity that you can play on. Obviously, fantasy sports, you put in tokens, you select your team, create your team. I take a platform fee irrespective of what happens, and you take the remaining of the pot. The reality is that's the only thing that's sustainable. If I have to create value for my token holders over a period of time, I have to have a way to make some revenue out of the game that you play. So if you set the expectation that you come in, it's all free, and you essentially, give that message on day one, then as you rightly said, Akshay, the expectation is, oh, I didn't win anything, which means I'm not good at this game, and I came in only for the monetary aspect. No, the idea should be that you engage them with the games, you engage them with the product that you have built, and hopefully that will keep them coming. Yes, it will take time. It will take a longer period of time, but you are at least making money every day. The economics make sense, right? So Crop Bytes may not have 100,000, 500,000 users, but every day they bring one guy in, they make money out of that guy. End of the day, that's all that matters, right? You are able to
Absolutely.
put an economic model that is sustaining and giving you value for the guys who have created the product. And that should be the way it is. Otherwise, companies will not be able to grow.
Exactly. And one thought that I remember, discussing internally, because we have supported a lot of games in the Web2 space as well, was that, we've seen teams spend, at a scale about 20 cents to take in or get a user, right? And then within the first week, they're making about 80 cents out of that user with their attention, because game ads was a huge thing in Web2, right? So their economics made sense immediately, right? You were making 4 times of what you were investing, right? And you know that at a larger scale would cover not just your cost, but will give you, enough amount of money to call it a success, right? Over time. So I think, that kind of economics has to be laid importance to. I do, feel that, early essence of gaming storytelling has to come in, right? And there are there is a plethora of important insights that Cheryl and Satish were able to share. And in interest of time, I'll say that, when you're looking at doing something in the Web3 gaming space, look at the essentials of why things have to be put on blockchain, and also understand where the user is, coming from. I mean, not everything, and most of the Web3 gamers may not even care. I think most of the traders don't care, outside of, the centralized exchanges. They're not interacting with DeFi, right? So, I mean, if that's not happening in the DeFi space, I don't know what, if it's as important or relevant in the GameFi space, right? So, just at that last thought, I'll quickly push Satish and Cheryl to share any last notes for the purpose of this session, and we'll end with that.
I only wanted to highlight, the heading of the conversation today. Is there game in GameFi? The game should be in all caps. And yes, the answer is, if there is game in GameFi, you will actually have a future. So I'll close with that, Cheryl. Cheryl, over to you.
I second that, because definitely I think, when we started the conversation, game, economics, and finance, I think all these three need to exist. And I think economics, for sure, the current considering the current scenario where we have so many games coming out who are only looking at game and how to make money, how to take money rather. So I think economics is something that I'd like to really touch upon. And if anyone here wants to know more about it, happy to kind of speak one on one and take it ahead. Thank you so much, Akshay, for the
Absolutely.
opportunity.
Perfect. I think lovely for you all. I mean, you both to take out time and share some lovely insights with the audience. Again, thanks a lot to everyone who tuned in. Manav, over to you. Definitely, there needs to be a game in GameFi with game in all caps, as Satish said.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Satish and Cheryl, for joining in. I know it got extended, but I was loving the conversation. I think so. The insights that both of you gave, it shows that how much you have been working in this industry and how much you understand. And it gives me a totally new perspective of looking at this in this space, and how GameFi is coming up, and what companies should be looking in, and specifically for new entrepreneurs. Thank you everyone for joining in, and would love to stay back, and whoever is there in the networking session get to know each one of you. Thank you all. See you. Have a
Thank you,
lovely
guys.
weekend.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.